The Zarkan queen sat on her tall, shiny throne, her eyes cold and sharp like a snake. She ruled a huge empire of planets, stars, and moons, and she thought no one could ever stand in her way. Her name was Queen Vaxara, and her people, the Zarkans, were tall, green-skinned aliens with claws as long as knives. They lived for power, and they loved to show it. On this day, Queen Vaxara wanted the whole galaxy to see just how strong she was. So she did something terrible. She ordered 100 humans to be brought to her grand arena, a giant stadium filled with cheering Zarkan crowds. These humans weren't soldiers or fighters. They were just regular people, teachers, farmers, builders, and even some kids not much older than you. She didn't care who they were. To her, they were nothing. The arena was a scary place. It was round and massive, with walls so high they seemed to touch the dark, starry sky. The ground was made of hard, black stone, and in the middle was a platform where the Queen's cruel games happened. The Zarkan crowds roared like thunder, waving their claws and shouting for the show to begin. They loved watching their queen prove her strength. The humans were pushed onto the platform, their hands tied with glowing ropes that burned their skin if they moved too much. They looked scared, but some stood tall, refusing to bow their heads. The queen smirked, thinking this would be easy. She raised her claw and the crowd went silent. With one word she gave the order, "End them." There was no trial. No one asked the humans their names or why they were there. No one gave them a chance to speak. The Zarkan guards, with their shiny armor and buzzing weapons, moved fast. The humans didn't have a chance. In moments, it was over. The arena was quiet again, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, like a storm is coming. The queen leaned back in her throne, pleased with herself. She thought no one would care about a few humans. She thought the galaxy would just forget them. She was wrong. Far away, on a small blue planet called Earth, people were listening. News traveled fast across the stars, carried by tiny machines called drones that zip through space like fireflies. These drones brought videos and messages to every corner of the galaxy. One drone reached Earth and its message spread like wildfire. People gathered in homes, schools, and city squares, watching screens that showed the terrible thing the Zarkan Queen had done. Parents hugged their kids. Friends held hands. Everyone felt the same thing: anger. Not the kind of anger that makes you yell and throw things, but the quiet kind that grows inside you and makes you want to do something big. The Zarkans didn't know much about humans. They thought Earth was weak because it was small and didn't have as many ships or weapons as their empire. They thought humans were soft because they cared about things like family, music, and stories. But that's where they made their mistake. Humans weren't weak. They were tough in a different way. When someone hurt their people, they didn't just sit and cry. They got to work. And this time, the Zarkan Queen had hurt the wrong people. The galaxy was watching too. Other alien races, some with wings, some with tails, some who lived in water or clouds, saw what happened. They whispered to each other on their own planets. The Zarkans went too far, they said. Those humans didn't deserve that. Some aliens were afraid of the Zarkans and stayed quiet. But others started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, someone would stand up to the Queen. They didn't know it yet, but that someone would be Earth. Back in the arena, the Zarkan crowds cheered again, thinking their queen had won another victory. They didn't notice the tiny drone hiding in the shadows, recording everything. They didn't see it fly away, carrying the truth to the stars. Queen Vaxara stood up, her long robe sparkling under the arena's bright lights. She raised her claws to the crowd and they shouted her name. She felt unstoppable. She thought this was the end of the story, but it was only the beginning. On Earth, a young girl named Leela watched the news with her family. Her older brother, Sam, had been one of the 100 taken to the arena. Sam was a teacher who loved showing kids how to grow food in space. He was kind and always made Leela laugh with his silly dances. Now he was gone. Leela's eyes were wet with tears, but she didn't look away from the screen. Her dad put his arm around her. "We'll make this right," he said. Leela didn't know how, but she believed him. All over Earth, people like Layla and her dad were feeling the same way. They weren't going to let the Zarkans get away with this. In a small town, a man named Mr. Chen heard the news while fixing a broken robot. His best friend, Aisha, was one of the humans in the arena. Aisha was a builder who made houses for people who didn't have any. She always carried a little hammer in her pocket and said, "Build something every day, even if it's just a smile." Mr. Chen stopped working and looked at the sky. He knew Aisha would want him to do something. He wasn't sure what yet, but he felt a fire in his heart. He wasn't the only one. Across Earth, people who loved the 100 were getting ready to act. The Zarkan Queen didn't know any of this. She didn't know about Layla or Mr. Chen or the millions of others who were watching and planning. She thought she had shown the galaxy who was boss. She thought no one would dare challenge her. But the galaxy wasn't just her playground. It was full of people and aliens who believed in fairness. And Earth was full of people who believed in fighting back. As the arena emptied, the Zarkan guards dragged away anything the humans had left behind: shoes, a scarf, a small toy one of the kids had held. They threw it all into a fire, thinking it would erase what happened. But you can't erase the truth. The drone's video was already spreading faster than the Queen could imagine. It reached ships in deep space, stations on frozen asteroids, and even some secret places where rebels hid from the Zarkans. Everywhere it went, it carried the same picture. 100 humans, brave and proud, standing tall even in their final moments. Queen Vaxara went back to her palace, a huge building made of black stone and glowing crystals. She sat at a long table with her generals, laughing about the day's show. "Humans are nothing," she said, sipping her drink that sparkled like melted stars. Her generals nodded, their eyes glinting in agreement. They thought the galaxy feared them. They thought power was all about being loud and scary. They didn't understand that sometimes the quietest things are the most dangerous. On Earth, the leaders were already talking. They weren't in a fancy palace like the Queen's. They met in a plain room with a simple table and a single screen showing the arena video. These leaders weren't kings or queens. They were regular people who had earned respect because they were smart and brave. One was a scientist who built machines to clean the oceans. Another was a pilot who flew ships through asteroid storms. They looked at each other and nodded, just like Lila and her dad had. They didn't need to say much. They knew what they had to do. The Zarkan Queen thought she had won because she was cruel. She thought cruelty made her strong. But she didn't know about the strength that comes from love, from caring about others, from refusing to give up. She didn't know about the galaxy's watchers, the people who saw everything and remembered. And she definitely didn't know about Earth. As the stars shone above, the news kept spreading. The drone's video reached a planet of bird-like aliens called the Scree. They watched in their tree homes and clicked their beaks in sadness. It reached a water planet where the Meru, fish-like aliens, swam in circles, their scales dimming with grief. It even reached a dusty asteroid where a group of rebels who hated the Zarkans cheered quietly. "The humans are waking up," they whispered. "Maybe they'll fight." The Zarkan queen slept that night, dreaming of power and glory. But across the galaxy, people were wide awake. On Earth, plans were starting to form. Leela drew a picture of her brother, smiling with his silly plants. Mr. Chen sketched a new idea for a ship design. The leaders in the plane room wrote down names and ideas and numbers. The galaxy watched, holding its breath. The queen thought it was easy. She thought 100 humans were nothing. She thought silence meant the end, but she was wrong. The silence was just the start. Earth was listening and it was ready to answer back. The 100 humans taken by the Zarkan queen weren't just random people. Each one had a story, a family, and someone who loved them deeply. They weren't soldiers or famous heroes. They were teachers, builders, dreamers, and kids with big hearts. But they were connected to people who were strong, smart, and ready to fight back. The Zarkans thought they could erase these humans and no one would care. They didn't know they had hurt the wrong people. One of the humans was a young woman named Aisha. She had bright eyes and a laugh that made everyone smile. Aisha was a builder who traveled to poor planets to make homes for families. She carried a small hammer in her pocket and loved teaching kids how to fix things. Her best friend was Mr. Chen, a quiet man who built robots that cleaned up space junk. When Mr. Chen heard Aisha was gone, his hands shook. He sat in his workshop, staring at a tiny house model Aisha had made for him. He wasn't loud or angry, but inside he felt a fire growing. He knew he had to do something for his friend. Another human was Sam, a teacher who grew plants in space. Sam was tall, with messy hair and a big grin. He taught kids how to make gardens on spaceships so they could have fresh food no matter where they traveled. His little sister, Layla, was only 10 years old. She loved Sam's silly dances and the way he named his plants funny names like Sprouty McLeaf. When Leela saw the news about the Zarkan arena, she held her dad's hand tight. Her dad was a scientist who built machines to talk to faraway planets. He looked at Leela and promised they would make things right. Leela believed him because her dad never broke a promise. There was also Maria, a nurse who helped sick people on a small space station. Maria was kind and always sang soft songs to calm her patients. Her brother, Captain Leo, was a fearless commander who flew ships through dangerous asteroid fields. Leo wasn't at the arena, but when he heard about Maria, his heart felt heavy. He stood on the deck of his ship, staring at the stars. Maria had once patched up his arm after a crash, humming a tune the whole time. Leo clenched his fists. He wasn't just a commander. He was a brother, and he would make the Zarkans pay for taking Maria. Then there was Jamal, a kid not much older than you. He was 12 and loved drawing pictures of spaceships. Jamal lived on a mining planet where his mom, Dr. Nia, studied rocks to find new energy sources. Jamal was one of the humans in the arena, and when Dr. Nia found out, she dropped her tools. She was a brilliant scientist who helped power entire cities with her discoveries. She loved Jamal's drawings and kept them on her desk. Now she sat in her lab, looking at his latest sketch of a ship with wings like a bird. Dr. Nia wasn't going to let her son's dreams disappear. She started thinking of ways to fight back. Another human was Mr. Patel, an old man who told stories to kids on his home planet. He wasn't rich or famous, but his stories were magic. They made people laugh, cry, and feel brave. His granddaughter, Zara, was a hacker who could break into any computer system. Zara was only 16, but she was already known across Earth for stopping alien spies who tried to steal secrets. When Zara heard about her grandpa, she sat at her computer, her fingers flying over the keys. She didn't cry. She worked. She knew Mr. Patel would want her to use her skills to help. There was also Elena, a cook who made the best food on a space station near a red star. Her soups and bread brought people together, even when they were far from home. Elena's best friend was Commander Rosa, a pilot who led a team of fighters. Rosa was tough, with scars on her hands from battles with pirates. When she learned Elena was gone, Rosa stood in her ship's control room, her face hard as stone. She remembered Elena's warm meals and the way she'd laugh while stirring a pot. Rosa wasn't going to let the Zarkans win. She started planning with her team. Another human was a boy named Tim, who loved fixing broken machines. Tim was only 11, but he could take apart a robot and put it back together better than before. His dad, engineer Marcus, built bridges between planets so ships could travel faster. When Marcus heard about Tim, he stopped his work and looked at a small wrench Tim had given him as a gift. Marcus was a big man with a gentle voice, but now his eyes were sharp. He knew how to build things, and he would build a plan to stop the Zarkans. There was also Sarah, a teacher who taught kids how to read the stars for navigation. She had a quiet voice but a strong heart. Her cousin, Dr. Lee, was a doctor who invented new ways to heal people. Dr. Lee was working on a medicine to help sick kids when he got the news about Sarah. He put down his tools and looked at a photo of them laughing together at a family party. Dr. Lee wasn't a fighter, but he was smart. He knew he could help in his own way. Every one of the 100 humans had someone who cared. There was a farmer named Carlos, whose wife, Maya, flew drones to deliver food to hungry planets. There was a librarian named Mrs. Kim, whose son, Jake, designed shields for spaceships. There was a kid named Ava, who loved singing, and her uncle, General Tom, who led Earth's biggest fleet. Each human was tied to someone powerful, not because they had money or weapons, but because they had love, skills, and courage. The Zarkans didn't understand this. They thought power came from claws, ships, and fear. They thought humans were weak because they didn't have a big empire like the Zarkans. But they didn't know about Mr. Chen's robots, Leela's dad's machines, or Zara's hacking skills. They didn't know about Commander Rosa's fighters or Dr. Nia's energy discoveries. They thought they could hurt 100 humans and walk away. They were wrong. On Earth, the news about the arena spread like a fast wind. People gathered in homes, schools, and parks. They watched the drone's video and saw the faces of the 100. They recognized Sam, Aisha, Maria, Jamal, and the others. These weren't strangers. They were brothers, sisters, friends, and kids. They were people who made life better for everyone. The Zarkans had taken them, thinking no one would care, but everyone cared. Leela sat with her dad, holding a picture of Sam. She traced his smile with her finger. "He was my hero," she whispered. Her dad nodded. "He still is," he said. Across the planet, Mr. Chen worked late in his workshop building something new. Zara typed faster than ever, her screen glowing with code. Commander Rosa called her pilots together, her voice steady. Dr. Nia drew plans for a new kind of energy weapon. They weren't just sad, they were ready. The Zarkans didn't know the humans they hurt were loved by people like these. They didn't know that taking Aisha would make Mr. Chen fight harder. They didn't know that taking Jamal would push Dr. Nia to use her science in new ways. They didn't know that taking Maria would make Captain Leo plan a battle like never before. They thought they had won a quick victory in their arena, but they had started something much bigger. The galaxy was starting to notice, too. On a planet of bird-like aliens called the Scree, leaders watched the video and shook their heads. The Zarkans are cruel, they said. On a water world, the Meru swam in worried circles, talking about the humans. Even some Zarkans, far from the Queen's palace, felt uneasy. They whispered to each other, "Did we go too far?" The galaxy wasn't just watching. It was waiting to see what Earth would do. Back on Earth, the families of the 100 came together. They didn't have a big meeting with fancy flags or loud speeches. They met in small rooms, in workshops, in ship hangars. They shared stories about the people they lost. Leela talked about Sam's plants. Mr. Chen showed Aisha's tiny house model. Captain Leo held up Maria's favorite scarf. They weren't just remembering, they were planning. They knew the Zarkans thought humans were weak. They were going to show them how wrong they were. The Zarkan queen sat in her palace, thinking her arena show had made her stronger. She didn't know about the fire growing on Earth. She didn't know about Leela, Mr. Chen, Zara, or the others. She didn't know that the 100 humans she hurt were the spark that would light a big fight. They weren't just strangers. They were the wrong people to mess with. The Zarkan queen thought she had won when she hurt the 100 humans in her arena. She sat on her shiny throne, smiling as her people cheered. But far away, on Earth and across the stars, humans were not sitting still. They didn't send angry messages or shout loud threats. Instead, they started to act quietly, carefully, and with a plan. The Queen didn't know it yet, but these small actions were the beginning of something big. It started with a Zarkan ship. It was a small one, not a warship, just a cargo carrier full of food and tools for a Zarkan outpost. The ship was flying near a dusty asteroid belt when it vanished. No explosion, no distress call, just gone. The Zarkan crew on a nearby station waited for it to arrive, but it never did. They checked their screens, called out to the ship, and got only silence. At first, they thought it was a mistake, maybe a broken radio. But when they sent a scout to look, they found nothing, not even a piece of the ship. It was as if it had never existed. On Earth, a young hacker named Zara was behind it. Zara was only 16, but she was a genius with computers. Her grandpa, Mr. Patel, was one of the 100 humans the Queen had taken. Zara loved his stories, and now she used her skills to honor him. She sat in a dark room, her face lit by the glow of her screen. Her fingers danced over the keys, sending secret codes through space. Those codes slipped into the Zarkan ship system like a whisper, shutting down its engines and hiding it in the asteroid belt. Zara didn't destroy the ship, she just made it disappear. She leaned back in her chair, her heart racing. This was her first move, but it wouldn't be her last. The Zarkans didn't notice at first. They had thousands of ships, and one missing cargo carrier wasn't a big deal. Queen Vaxara heard about it during a meeting with her generals. She waved her claw and laughed. "A glitch," she said, her voice sharp like glass. "Find the ship and fix it." Her generals nodded, but they didn't know Zara was already planning her next step. A few days later, a Zarkan supply station went dark. This station was a big one floating near a red planet. It stored fuel, water, and machines for the Zarkan army. One morning, its lights flickered and died. The workers inside tried to turn things back on, but nothing worked. The screens were blank, the doors wouldn't open, and even the air pump stopped humming. The Zarkans inside were confused, banging on panels and shouting at each other. They sent a message to their leaders, but no one knew what had happened. There was no attack, no warning, just silence. This time, it was Mr. Chen's work. Mr. Chen was a robot builder whose best friend, Aisha, was one of the 100. He wasn't a soldier, but he was clever. In his workshop on Earth, he built tiny robots no bigger than a coin. These robots could sneak into places and break things without being seen. Mr. Chen sent them to the Zarkan station on a delivery drone that looked harmless. The robots crawled into the station's wires and turned everything off. Mr. Chen watched from his workshop, a small smile on his face. He wasn't fighting with guns. He was fighting with brains. The Zarkan queen heard about the station and laughed again. "A broken machine," she said, her eyes glinting. "Send workers to fix it." She didn't think it was a big problem. She didn't know that humans like Zara and Mr. Chen were working together, each doing small things that added up. The queen was used to loud battles with flashing lasers and roaring ships. She didn't understand quiet plans. On another planet, a Zarkan trade post stopped working. This post was where Zarkans bought and sold things like metal, food, and fuel. One day, the computers that ran the market froze. Prices went crazy. Some things cost 1,000,000 credits, others were free. Traders shouted and argued, but no one could fix it. The market shut down and Zarkan ships left empty-handed. This was the work of Leela's dad, a scientist named Dr. Hassan. His son, Sam, was one of the 100. Dr. Hassan was angry, but he was smart. He sent a virus to the trade post's computers, a tiny program that messed up everything. He worked late at night, his desk covered with coffee cups and papers. Leela brought him a blanket when he fell asleep at his desk. "For Sam," she whispered. Dr. Hassan nodded. This was for Sam. The Zarkans started to notice something was wrong. 3 things in a row, a ship, a station, a trade post, weren't accidents, but they didn't know who was doing it. They checked their systems, sent out scouts, and argued in their big palace. Queen Vaxara wasn't laughing anymore, but she wasn't worried yet. "Find the problem," she told her generals, her voice cold. "Fix it fast." She thought it was just bad luck. She didn't know humans were behind it. Back on Earth, more people joined the quiet fight. Captain Leo, whose sister Maria was one of the 100, flew his ship to a Zarkan signal tower. This tower sent messages across their empire, telling ships where to go. Leo didn't fire a single shot. Instead, he used a device that scrambled the tower's signals. Suddenly, Zarkan ships got wrong directions. Some flew into empty space, others got lost in asteroid fields. Leo sat in his pilot chair, his hands steady. He thought of Maria's songs and kept working. Dr. Nia, Jamal's mom, was also busy. Jamal loved drawing spaceships, and now Dr. Nia used her science to mess with Zarkan fuel. She sent a chemical to a Zarkan fuel depot, carried by a tiny drone. The chemical didn't explode, it just made the fuel sticky and useless. Zarkan ships couldn't fly, and their pilots were stuck on the ground, confused. Dr. Nia worked in her lab, her son's drawings pinned to the wall. She wasn't a fighter, but she was fighting for Jamal. The humans didn't work alone. They talked to each other through secret messages, using codes the Zarkans couldn't read. Zara sent tips to Mr. Chen about which stations to hit. Dr. Hassan shared his virus with Captain Leo. They were like a team, each person doing something small but important. No one fired a laser or shouted a warning. They worked in the shadows, making the Zarkans feel uneasy. The Galaxy Gujarati, Usaninus blackout. The Zarkans started to feel the pressure. A fourth problem happened. A Zarkan repair dock stopped working. Machines broke down and no one could fix them. This was the work of engineer Marcus, Tim's dad. Marcus knew how to build bridges, but he also knew how to break things. He sent a signal that confused the dock's robots, making them spin in circles. Zarkan workers tried to stop them, but the robots just kept spinning. Marcus sat in his control room, thinking of Tim's love for machines. He didn't smile, but he felt proud. The Queen's generals were getting nervous. They met in the palace, their claws tapping the table. "It's not random," one said. "Someone is doing this." Another general growled, "It's not possible. No one would dare." But they were starting to wonder. The Queen still wasn't scared, but her laugh was gone. She sent more ships to check the problems, but the humans were always one step ahead. On Earth, the team grew. Commander Rosa, Elena's friend, joined the fight. She flew a small ship to a Zarkan satellite and turned off its power. The satellite stopped sending signals and Zarkan ships in that area got lost. Rosa didn't attack. She just made things stop working. She thought of Elena's warm soups and kept going. The galaxy began to notice. On the Scree planet, bird-like aliens watched their screens and whispered, "The humans are clever." On the Meru water world, fish-like aliens swam faster, excited by the news. Even some Zarkans far from the Queen's palace started to question her. "She's making enemies," they muttered. The galaxy was waiting to see what would happen next. The humans kept their plans secret. They didn't brag or make noise. They worked like ants, each doing a small job that added up to something big. A Zarkan camera stopped recording. A Zarkan gate wouldn't open. A Zarkan water system slowed to a drip. Each time it was a human, someone who had lost someone they loved. They didn't need to shout. Their actions spoke louder than words. The Queen called another meeting. Her throne room was quiet now, the air heavy. "Who is doing this?" she asked, her voice like a hiss. Her generals looked at each other unsure. "It could be rebels," one said. "Or pirates," said another. No one said humans. They still thought Earth was too small to matter. They were wrong. On Earth, the humans met in a hidden room. Zara showed them her next code. Mr. Chen shared his robot designs. Dr. Hassan talked about a bigger virus. Captain Leo drew a map of Zarkan weak spots. Leela brought them water, her small hands steady. They were a family, not by blood but by purpose. They were fighting for the 100 and they were just getting started. The Zarkans didn't know what was coming. The Queen thought her empire was too strong to fall. She didn't know that small actions could break big things. She didn't know that humans were stubborn, smart, and angry. The galaxy watched, holding its breath. The humans weren't loud, but they were moving. Something had started and it wasn't going to stop. The Zarkan Queen sat in her grand palace, her sharp claws tapping on her throne. She still thought she was untouchable, but her generals were starting to feel uneasy. One general, a tall Zarkin named Korath with scales that shimmered like dark emeralds, was the first to notice something strange. He stood in the command room, a big space filled with glowing screens and buzzing machines. Reports kept coming in, ships missing, stations shutting down, and trade posts going haywire. At first, everyone thought these were accidents, but Korath wasn't so sure. He stared at the screens, his yellow eyes narrowing. Something was wrong. Korath was different from the other generals. He wasn't loud or quick to brag. He liked to think carefully, studying details like a puzzle. He called his team to the command room, a group of Zarkins who checked information from across the Empire. "Show me the reports again," he said, his voice low but firm. His team pulled up the data on a big screen. It showed a list of problems: a cargo ship gone in an asteroid belt, a supply station with no power, a trade post with broken computers, and a signal tower sending nonsense directions. Korath leaned closer, his claws tracing the screen. "This isn't random," he said. "There's a pattern." The other Zarkins in the room looked at each other, confused. "What do you mean, General?" one asked, scratching his spiky head. Korath pointed to the map on the screen. It showed where each problem happened all across the Zarkin Empire. The dots weren't scattered like accidents would be. They formed a line like footsteps leading somewhere. "Someone is doing this on purpose," Korath said. His team went quiet. They weren't used to anyone challenging the Zarkins. Their empire was huge, with thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. Who would dare? Korath walked to a window, looking out at the starry sky. He thought about the humans, the ones the Queen had hurt in the arena. Most Zarkins thought humans were weak, like bugs you could squash and forget. But Korath had heard stories about Earth. He knew humans were stubborn and clever even if their planet was small. He turned back to his team. "Check the records," he ordered. "Find out if humans are near any of these places." His team nodded and started typing, their claws clicking on the machines. Meanwhile, in the palace, Queen Vaxara was holding a feast. She sat at a long table covered with glowing fruits and drinks that sparkled like jewels. Her generals laughed and toasted her name, their voices echoing in the huge hall, but Korath wasn't there. He was still in the command room reading new reports. His team found something odd. A tiny drone, no bigger than a bird, had been spotted near the missing cargo ship. It was Zarkin. It had Earth markings. Korath's heart beat faster. "Humans," he whispered. He didn't tell the Queen yet. He needed more proof. The next day, another problem hit. A Zarkin factory on a dusty moon stopped working. This factory made weapons, shiny guns that shot blue fire. Suddenly, its machines froze. The workers tried to fix them, but the controls wouldn't move. Sparks flew, and a strange message appeared on the screens. "Remember the 100. The workers were scared. They sent the news to Korath, who read it and felt a chill. The 100 were the humans the Queen had taken. This wasn't an accident. It was a message. Korath called a secret meeting with a few trusted officers. They met in a small room away from the palace's bright lights. "The humans are fighting back," he told them. His officers gasped. "Humans," one said, laughing nervously. "They don't have enough ships." Korath shook his head. "They don't need ships. They're using their brains." He showed them the reports, the drone, the message, the pattern of broken things. "They're hitting us where it hurts, and they're doing it quietly." Back on Earth, the humans were busy. Zara, the young hacker, was in her room, her computer screen glowing with new codes. She had just sent a virus to the Zarkin factory, the one that made the message appear. She smiled, thinking of her grandpa's stories. He'd be proud of her. Mr. Chen, the robot builder, was in his workshop, making more tiny bots to sneak into Zarkin's systems. He thought of his friend Aisha and worked faster. Dr. Hassan, Leela's dad, was testing a new signal jammer that could confuse Zarkin ships. Leela brought him a sandwich, her small face serious. "For Sam," she said. Dr. Hassan hugged her. "For Sam," he agreed. Zarkins didn't know about these people yet, but Koreth was starting to understand. He went to the palace to tell the queen. The throne room was quiet, the feast over. Queen Vaxara sat alone, her claws curled around a crystal cup. "What now, Koreth?" she asked, her voice sharp. Koreth stood tall. "The humans are causing trouble," he said. "They're behind the missing ship, the dead station, everything." The queen's eyes widened, then she laughed, a cold sound like breaking ice. "Humans, those weak creatures." "Impossible." But Koreth didn't back down. "It's not impossible," he said. "They're smart, they're planning." The queen stood, her robe sweeping the floor. "Then find them," she snapped. "Crush them." Koreth bowed but didn't move. He knew it wouldn't be that easy. The humans weren't fighting with guns or armies. They were hitting the Zarkins in small, clever ways, like a mouse nibbling holes in a giant's house. He left the throne room and went back to his command center, his mind racing. He needed to figure out what the humans would do next. That night, another Zarkin outpost went quiet. This one was a communication hub, a place that sent messages to Zarkin ships across the galaxy. Suddenly, its signals stopped. Ships waiting for orders got nothing but static. The Zarkin commanders on those ships were confused, shouting at their crews to fix it. But the problem wasn't on their end. It was Captain Leo, Maria's brother, who had flown his ship close to the hub. He used a device to block its signals, like turning off a radio. Leo sat in his pilot's seat, thinking of Maria's kind smile. He wasn't done yet. Koreth got the news and added it to his map. Another dot, another piece of the puzzle. He called his team again. "Look for human ships," he said. "Check every corner of space." His team worked fast, scanning the stars. They found a faint trail. A human ship had been near the communication hub before it went dark. Korath's scales prickled. The humans were everywhere, like shadows you couldn't catch. The other generals were starting to worry too. At a meeting in the palace, one named Zorak spoke up. "What if Korath is right?" he asked, his voice shaky. "What if the humans are stronger than we thought?" The other generals laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. They remembered the arena, the 100 humans who stood tall even when they were scared. Maybe those humans weren't so weak. Maybe their friends and families weren't either. Queen Vaxara didn't want to hear it. "Enough," she shouted, slamming her claw on the table. "I rule this galaxy. No human can stop me." But her voice wasn't as strong as before. She looked at Korath, who stood quietly in the corner. "Fix this," she said. Korath nodded, but inside he was thinking hard. He knew the humans weren't just causing trouble. They were building something, a plan to make the Zarkins pay. On Earth, the humans kept working. Commander Rosa, Alina's friend, sent a team to mess with a Zarkin water plant. The plant purified water for a Zarkin city, but Rosa's team added a chemical that made the water taste bad. It wasn't dangerous, but it made the Zarkins angry. They couldn't drink and they didn't know why. Rosa smiled as she flew away, thinking of Elena's warm bread. She was fighting for her friend. Dr. Nia, Jamal's mom, was working on a new idea. She sent a signal to a Zarkin power grid, making lights flicker across a whole planet. The Zarkins there were confused, running around in the dark. Dr. Nia sat in her lab, her son's spaceship drawings on her desk. She wasn't a soldier, but she was fighting with science. Engineer Marcus, Tim's dad, shut down a Zarkin bridge, stopping their ships from moving between planets. He thought of Tim's love for fixing things and kept going. The galaxy was watching. The Scree, the bird-like aliens, saw the Zarkin troubles and whispered, "The humans are brave." The Meru, the fish-like aliens, swam in excited circles, talking about Earth's clever tricks. Even some Zarkins started to doubt their queen. "She made a mistake," they said quietly, far from her palace. The galaxy was buzzing with stories of the humans' small revenge. Korath stayed up late studying his map. The dots were growing, more ships, more stations, more problems. He saw the pattern clearly now. The humans were hitting the Zarkins' weakest spots, places that kept their empire running. They weren't fighting with lasers or bombs. They were using tricks, codes, and tiny machines. Korath respected it, even if he couldn't say so out loud. He knew the Queen wouldn't listen, but he sent more scouts to find the humans. The humans didn't stop. Zara hacked another Zarkin system, making a training base's doors lock shut. Mr. Chen's robots crawled into a Zarkin warehouse, mixing up all the supplies. Dr. Hassan's virus spread to a Zarkin news network, showing the arena video instead of the Queen's speeches. The Zarkins were getting nervous, and the Queen was starting to feel it. She paced her throne room, her claws clicking on the floor. "Find them," she shouted to her generals. But the humans were too fast, too quiet. Korath sat alone in his command room, the screens glowing around him. He thought about the humans, about their small planet and their big hearts. He thought about the 100, the ones the Queen had hurt. He didn't know their names, but he knew they mattered. The humans weren't scared. They were getting ready, and Korath, for the first time, felt a flicker of fear. Back on Earth, something important was happening. Deep in a hidden building, far from the bright lights of cities, a group of people gathered. They weren't kings or queens, and there were no fancy flags or cameras watching. It was just a plain room with a round table, a few chairs, and a single screen on the wall. These people were leaders, chosen because they were smart, brave, and cared about their world. They had all lost someone special in the Zarkin Queen's arena, brothers, sisters, friends, or kids. They weren't here to make speeches or feel sad. They were here to make a plan to beat the Zarkins and win. The room was quiet, but the air felt heavy with purpose. Dr. Hassan, Leela's dad, stood at the table. He was a scientist who built machines to talk to faraway stars. His son, Sam, was one of the 100 humans the Zarkins took. Dr. Hassan's eyes were tired, but his voice was strong. He held a small device that glowed softly. "This can stop their ships," he said, showing it to the group. Everyone leaned closer, curious. They trusted Dr. Hassan because he never gave up, even when things were hard. Next to him was Captain Leo, a pilot with scars on his hands from flying through dangerous space storms. His sister, Maria, was gone because of the Zarkins. Leo's face was serious, but he nodded at Dr. Hassan. "We can use that," he said. "My team can get close to their fleets." Leo's ships were fast and small, perfect for sneaking past Zarkin guards. He wasn't loud or boastful, but everyone knew he could fly through anything. Across the table sat Zara, the young hacker who had already made a Zarkin ship disappear. Her grandpa, Mr. Patel, was one of the 100. Zara was only 16, but her quick fingers and sharp mind made her a hero to the group. She tapped her computer, showing a map of Zarkin systems. "I can break into their computers," she said, "but we need to hit more places at once." Her voice was steady, like she'd been planning this for years, not days. The adults in the room smiled. Zara was young, but she was fierce. Mr. Chen was there too, the robot builder who lost his friend Aisha. He held a tiny bot, no bigger than a marble, that could crawl into machines and turn them off. "These can go anywhere," he said, rolling the bot across the table. It stopped in front of Dr. Nia, a scientist who studied energy. Her son, Jamal, loved drawing spaceships, and he was one of the 100. Dr. Nia picked up the bot, her eyes bright with an idea. "We can use these to shut down their power," she said. "I know how to make their fuel useless." She sketched a quick plan on a piece of paper, her hand moving fast. Commander Rosa stood by the door, her arms crossed. She was a tough pilot who led a team of fighters, and her friend Alina was taken by the Zarkins. Rosa didn't talk much, but when she did, everyone listened. "We need to be fast," she said. "The Zarkins are starting to notice us." She pointed to the screen, which showed a news report from a Zarkin planet. It mentioned the missing ship and the broken station. The group nodded. They knew their small tricks were working, but they had to do more. Engineer Marcus, Tim's dad, sat quietly thinking. Tim loved fixing machines, and Marcus built bridges between planets. He leaned forward. "We can block their paths," he said. "I can make their ships stuck." He drew a quick picture of a space gate, showing how to jam it. The group liked his idea. If the Zarkins couldn't move, they couldn't fight. The leaders weren't alone. Other people came and went, bringing ideas and tools. A teacher named Ms. Lee, whose cousin Sarah was one of the 100, brought maps of Zarkin planets. A farmer named Maya, whose husband Carlos was taken, shared ideas about stopping Zarkin food supplies. Even Layla, Sam's little sister, helped by carrying water and paper to the table. She was only 10, but she wanted to be part of the plan. "For Sam," she whispered to her dad. Dr. Hassan hugged her tight. The group worked late into the night. The room was lit by soft lights, and the screen showed more reports of their work. A Zarkin trade post frozen, a signal tower quiet, a factory with a strange message. They knew the Zarkins were worried, thanks to General Korath, who was starting to see their pattern. But the humans were ready to stay one step ahead. They didn't want a big war with loud battles. They wanted to be smart, quiet, and strong. Dr. Hassan stood again, holding up a list. "We have 3 goals," he said. "First, stop their machines. Second, mess up their supplies. Third, show the galaxy we're not afraid." Everyone nodded. They liked the plan because it wasn't about hurting people. It was about making the Zarkins weak so they'd listen. The Queen thought humans were nothing, but these leaders were going to prove her wrong. Zara raised her hand. "I can hit their main computer," she said. "It controls their biggest stations." She showed a diagram on her screen, pointing to a Zarkin hub that sent orders to their army. "If we break this, they'll be confused." The group agreed, but Captain Leo warned, "It's guarded. We'll need a distraction." Rosa smiled. "My team can fly circles around their ships," she said. "They won't see Zara's code coming." Mr. Chen had another idea. "My bots can go to their fuel depots," he said. He held up a new bot, this one with tiny claws to cut wires. "We can slow their ships down." Dr. Nia nodded. "I'll add my chemical to the bots," she said. "It'll make their fuel sticky like glue." The group liked this. If Zarkin ships couldn't fly, they couldn't chase humans. Marcus spoke next. "I'll block their space gates," he said. "If their ships are stuck, they can't send help." He showed a plan to jam the gates with fake signals, like locking a door from far away. Ms. Lee added, "I found a map of their secret gates. We can hit those too." The group was excited. They were building a plan like a puzzle, each piece fitting perfectly. Leela listened, her eyes wide. She didn't understand all the big words, but she knew they were fighting for Sam and the others. She drew a picture of a starship on a piece of paper and gave it to Zara. "For luck," she said. Zara smiled and taped it to her computer. "Thanks, kid," she said. Leela felt proud. She was helping, too. Outside, the night was dark, but Earth was alive with hope. People in towns and cities heard whispers of the plan. They didn't know the details, but they trusted the leaders. Families lit candles for the 100, and kids drew pictures of brave humans fighting back. The galaxy was watching, too. The Scree, bird-like aliens, sent a secret message to Earth, saying, "We see you." The Meru, fish-like aliens, swam in patterns that meant good luck. Even some Zarkins, far from the Queen's palace, started to doubt her. "She's losing control," they whispered. Back in the room, the leaders kept planning. They didn't have a big army, but they had ideas. Dr. Hassan showed a new device that could hide human ships from Zarkin scanners. "We can move without being seen," he said. Captain Leo liked that. "My pilots can get closer now," he said. Rosa added, "We'll hit their weak spots: fuel, gates, computers." The group was ready to make the Zarkins feel trapped. Zara typed fast, her screen full of codes. "I'm almost ready," she said. "I just need one more day." Mr. Chen tested his bots, making sure they could crawl without being caught. Dr. Nia mixed her chemical, her hands steady. Marcus drew more gate plans, and Ms. Lee marked secret Zarkin bases on the map. They worked like a team, each person doing something important. The screen on the wall showed a new report. A Zarkin water plant had bad-tasting water thanks to Rosa's team. The group smiled. Their small tricks were working, and the Zarkins were getting nervous. Dr. Hassan turned to the group. "We're not fighting to destroy," he said. "We're fighting to show them we're strong. We want them to stop hurting us." Everyone agreed. They didn't want to be cruel like the Queen. They wanted to be better. Leela fell asleep in a chair, her picture of Sam's plants in her hand. Dr. Hassan covered her with a blanket. He looked at the group, his voice soft but clear. "This is for them," he said, meaning the 100. "For Sam, Maria, Aisha, Jamal, and everyone we lost." The room was quiet, but everyone felt the same. They were a family, not by blood but by heart. They were fighting for the people they loved. The plan was growing. Zara would hack the Zarkin hub. Mr. Chen and Dr. Nia would stop their fuel. Marcus and Ms. Lee would block their gates. Leo and Rosa would keep the Zarkins busy with fast ships. Dr. Hassan's devices would hide them all. It wasn't a loud plan with big explosions. It was a quiet plan, like a net closing around the Zarkins. The Queen thought humans were weak, but she was about to learn the truth. As the sun rose, the leaders kept working. They didn't rest because they knew the Zarkins wouldn't. They sent secret messages to other humans across Earth, telling them to be ready. Pilots checked their ships. Scientists tested their tools. Hackers like Zara shared their codes. Everyone had a job and everyone was ready to do it. The galaxy waited. The Scree watched from their tree homes, their beaks clicking with excitement. The Meru sang soft songs in their water cities. Even the rebels, hiding on a dusty asteroid, heard about Earth's plan and cheered. "The humans are coming," they said. The Zarkans didn't know it yet, but their empire was starting to shake. In the secret room, the leaders looked at each other. They didn't need words. They knew what was at stake. Dr. Hassan put his device on the table. Zara closed her computer. Rosa checked her pilot gear. They were ready. The plan was set. The Zarkans thought they could hurt humans and walk away. They were wrong. Earth was coming and it was going to win.